Good morning, L&Ds. This is your wake-up call for a new normal for learning. And with that, welcome to our session of Good Morning L&D. I'm very happy to have you all here with us today. In the recent weeks and months, I've been traveling a lot, seeing many L&D professionals, L&D heads. I've been visiting conferences. I read reports, maybe the same that you read. And yeah, you can get this feeling of L&D or learning is becoming more important in our world and also in the corporate and kind of company context. So learning is becoming more important. I think that's what everyone agrees. But here's the other side of the coin. Many L&D professionals may see all these opportunities for new learning and for changing learning and development, but are at the same time stuck in their old roles and in their old kind of habits, in their old day-to-day business. And the big question is, how do we change that? So questions we want to tackle today are, what is the new role of L&D? And what does it actually take for an L&D to change or to get to this new role? And what kind of skills are needed for that? What kind of environment is needed for that? What kind of allies do I need to find in my organization for that? And this is exactly what we want to discuss today. And I'm happy that we have guests to discuss this with, and all of them bring a huge experience in learning and development. And I would even say somehow front runners in exploring this new role of L&D and can share their experiences and their learnings on their journeys. So let's welcome together, first of all, Lavinia. Lavinia is the founder of Offbeat. Offbeat is, for me, one of the most innovative L&D communities we have in Europe and brings together L&D professionals to share experiences, to learn from each other, and is doing a lot of research also on this role change. So I'm very happy, Lavinia, to have you here. Welcome. And Lavinia brought actually 2 mentors from Offbeat. So at Offbeat, you can find other L&D professionals who mentor L&D professionals. And we have 2 of them here today. One is Aki. He's a director of learning experience at Superside. Superside, for those who don't know, Superside is a very interesting creative as a service company. It's fully remote, globally, working with over 500 creatives. Super interesting business. And on the other hand, we have Dini, and she is also a celebrated learning and development manager at Hey Jobs with extensive experience in setting up L&D departments for fast-growing companies. So you see, I brought some experts, and I think we're going to have a really great discussion. But last but not least, I want to welcome you all as our final guests, and that's basically you at your screens, you're following us here in this live stream. Please join our discussion. Please bring in your questions, your comments. We're going to see them here in the chat. We're going to bring them into our discussion. So welcome also to you. And for those of you who, like me, get always a bit nervous on note-taking, I have some good news because we're going to have Leah from our team who will be visual recording the session. And after the session, you can find the visual recording. So this is the kind of blank sheet that she will fill following our discussion here live. And we're going to see also a little preview at the end. So with that, let's get started into our discussion. And I want to start with you, Dini. So you know the discussion, right? L&D is changing. I think you heard this so many times. But let's try to make it really concrete and get away from this abstract level. Where do you experience in your role or see also maybe colleagues in L&D really changing or shifting their roles in L&D? Can you give us some examples?
It's hard to start, but I think if I have to give an example. In my case, it's kind of a pressure when you say the huge experience in L&D. I don't have a 30 years of experience in L&D, so I didn't really see like the major shift or however it went. But for me, I think before, like when I started L&D, I started in corporate and I started in a thing called academy. I think most big corporations, they have their internal academy, which pretty much deliver trainings, and you can find a catalog, you can sign up for courses and this kind of thing. And that's where I started. And that's also what I thought at first was L&D, or at least that's how I understood it. My manager telling me to, hey, we need to upskill our leaders, our employees for certain skills because of technological advancements, because of demographical change. I think in Germany it's super relevant. We don't have a lot of talents and all these kind of things. That's just reality of the business. And you need to create something to help people cope with their current role and also for the future role. And because I came from product development, that was already a weird question for me, because like, how do I know that training is the right solution for this problem? Like, how do I even know that this is the right problem? So I already approached L&D from the beginning on differently. But then I saw that it was weird for my managers, also for my colleagues, because I started questioning, like, okay, like, is it really we need this, or do we actually need something else to solve the business problem, or what is actually the problem? So if I come back to your question, like, how do L&D problem, like L&D roles shifted from before, I think it's time for a lot of L&D to start questioning, okay, what is it actually asked by me in this organization? Why am I being hired? And after I shifted to startups, in startups, scale ups, every line of budget spend is being questioned a lot. Like, okay, if we are hiring a role, what does this person bring to the table? What is the business impact that this person will create? So it's not like, oh, we need a training catalog, or we need someone who will deal with development of our employees. They usually have a very concrete number that they want to bring or they want to achieve, and then we are part of it, and then you got hired for it. So it's not for learning per se. You are there to solve business problem. I think that would be my first thought on the topic.
It's super interesting also having this transition from a corporate L&D role to more of a startup or scale-up role. And what I hear in between the lines is that this also maybe needs a different kind of skill, right? Which is maybe less on booking trainings and more on consulting the business, right? And questioning the business and analyzing and stuff. But we'll come to this in a minute. But first of all, thank you for your perspective and experience. And maybe Aki, how would you had a little bit more time to think about it. Where would you see the biggest shifts in the job of a L&D professional?
Yes, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Denny said it all. That's a tricky one. I'm kidding. We've had this conversation actually quite a bit between Denny and Lavinia as well. I think, what Denny described, I think it was never really valid, this role of saying, I start with the solution, I start with training. And I think what these times bring out is just that it becomes very obvious that this is not effective, right? Especially with the technological revolution, evolution, whatever you want to call it. I think that it's the case that we just see that this is not the way we can upskill people. And but I think it was the same before. And I think it just, many of the things that didn't work in L&D now show is really, not working and really critical to achieve our job. And so in that sense, I think perhaps it's not even a role shifting so much, but rather it becomes obvious that the way we did it in the past very often wasn't as effective. And I'm including myself. I'm guilty of many of the things that I'm talking about at the moment. But generally speaking, I think what I've seen in the past months or year or so with really a lot of shift in technological environment worldwide, but also in my past 3-4 years in startups or so, is that managing change or leading change or going into change is a really important skill for L&Ds in these times, because we can't separate it from learning, right? It's not that we learn in one place and then we change in another place. It is very connected, and it becomes so obvious at the moment. And I'm seeing this a lot, especially with roles that are impacted by AI very directly. I see that it is not a separate process, and we need to really understand that need to see this holistically. So that's one thing. The other thing, Dini said it already, is I think around business, being business centric and really understanding a business and starting with the business, right? So we play a role in a business, and our goal should be to add value to that business in whatever sense we align on. And I think really starting to understand what the business does, how we can add value to it, and spending significant time on this is a really important skill. And last but not least, I think it is never wrong to learn about technology in these times. Just understanding what it means, what this technological development means in terms of what it means to different roles, what we need to learn in terms of understanding what the technology can do, what it can't do, what it's good at, and so on. And really adding this lens of saying, I feel, like technology mostly meant LMSs for us in the past. Like it was, there's an LMS and I kind of have to manage it. And as you said, book training. And I think now this is so much broader, and it's a no-go not to engage with this and trying to understand it. Not saying everybody needs to be an expert, but I think it's really important to dive into it and be curious about it.
Yeah, thank you, Aki. I like those kind of three folds that you showed. Let's maybe zoom a little bit out here and bring in Lavinia, right? Because Lavinia, you know so many L&D professionals and you are at so many conferences. When you listen to Dini, to Aki, how does that resonate? And is that something that you see more as a kind of common theme or a pattern that shines through these kind of reports?
Yeah, well, I think everybody has the same issues. That's the truth. That's something that I have learned over the past 4 years since we've been running Offbeat. At first, I thought, oh, it's just my organization. Then, oh, it's just my country. And then as I met everyone, I just realized that no matter the geographical location or the size of your company, everybody has the same issue. And we've been having these issues for a while now. But I think as time went by, everybody started seeing them, and there's more and more pressure on us to stop just talking about these issues and actually acting on them. So I'm talking about, people are not attending our trainings, they are not completing their e-learnings and so on. So when you have this issue for a year, when you have it for 10 years, it's already a huge problem. So it means there's something structurally wrong in the way we do things. And what I heard Dini and Aki say, so Dini talked a lot about this focus on problem and going from solution to, okay, what really is the problem? And then, figuring out the solution. And I feel like so far, we have been talking a lot about trainings and workshops as a solution. And I see Matthias here in the chat saying maybe training is not necessarily the problem. Maybe the way we do training and the way we do programs is the problem. So, and I think he's right. So on one hand, how is it that we can reshape our current solution for it to be useful for our learners? And secondly, what else do we need to add to our stack of tools to make sure that whenever we see a problem, we don't address it with, only one, maybe quite basic solution at times. And I'm talking about behavioral science here. I'm talking about change management, about neuroscience. So I think, the role of L&D is becoming more complex than it was before. And I think it's a very, very good path for us, because it says that we will also be able to show more impact and more value within the organizations that we're in.
I mean, just building on what you said, Lavinia, and how you said it even. A couple of masterclasses ago, I had a guest, his name is Robert Neuhauser. He was transforming 7 years HR at Siemens. And before that, he actually was running a business unit with 20,000 people at Siemens. So he came from the business into HR and was transforming HR 7 years. And he put up this formula, which was basically be logical, be radical, and be persistent to his whole HR organization. And it just reminded me, listening to you three, right? This aspect of being logical, right? So there is a problem, and we might think we have a solution because we've always done it like that. Is that really the solution, right? Challenging that, being logical here. Central career planning might not make sense in a time where it's more and more kind of insecure where the business is going, right? Maybe we need to decentralize this. So the central academy idea might not be the best one, right? So really challenging those fundamental ideas of L&D in terms of being logical, and then being radical in terms of, okay, so if that's not really true here, how can we change it, right? And what do we need to do here actually? And then being persistent in terms of, yeah, there will be leaders who will, shout out, no, we still need this leadership assessment process, whatever. No, you might not, right? In the end, it's maybe just a workaround around bad leadership, right? So, but what is your formula here, right? I mean, how do you bring this new understanding of L&D into your organizations, and what did you need to learn also to do that?
I think his framework is really great. There's one more thing that I would add, because something I've noticed is that we've been talking about these technical frameworks for a while now. And even if we know these technical frameworks, we end up not applying them. So I think that the fourth part that I would add is be courageous. And it's not as easy as it sounds, because to Dini's point, you need to push. You need to push back. You need to ask questions. And even the skill of asking questions requires courage. You need to be courageous to say, hey, a training is not what you need. There seems to be, again, a systemic issue here, and so on. So yeah, this is the first thought that came to mind when hearing you speak about this formula.
But to change that, I feel is so hard, right? Because there are many L&D professionals who grew up in a world where, for them, being impactful was getting good feedback on a training, right? The happy sheets. And now suddenly, suddenly that's not the impact, right, anymore, right? So this is a big thing, right? To change that. And how did you do that? I mean, and maybe Dini, you can jump in here.
When we talk about like tools or frameworks, Aki and I, we talk regularly, just venting our frustration usually about whatever problems you're having at the moment at the organization. And I think like lately our conversations have been like, after several years in such a turbulent organization like startup and scale up, what we learn, or what I learned, is everything is about finding that balance of where should I strike with which tool, which, it takes us years to get into the point of like, oh yeah, it turns out that approach was not an all size solution for this problem. And I think someone mentioned it as well. I think it was Matthias in the comment that sometimes, yes, like blaming training as, oh, that's not the solution, is also not the way to go. Because sometimes I have to balance like, okay, do I have to solve a business problem? Which then means me needing to question my method and what is the actual problem? Or do I have to solve a learning problem? I mean, if there is a clear need for specific skill, for example, this AI topic, it's clear that we need people to upskill themselves in that topic. And we need to properly find the right method to make sure that they learn it. Maybe not only through training, but all kinds of different methodologies that we have to apply. But finding that balance requires a lot of listening, which then also makes you question, do I move as a knowledgeable expert, meaning that, oh, I am the learning and development expert, I know how people learn, I know how this and this, or do I come in as an empathetic explorer, meaning that this is a new problem, I've never seen it before, and it's a new skills that we got to learn, it's a new methodology, a technology that we have to apply, then I have to come in there and listen more. And it's also like, okay, do I have to be do I have to assert my autonomy? Meaning here, I am the L&D expert. I know how people should learn. And that's also then the question for you as an L&D expert to understand how human brain works. But then, so like, do I have to assert my autonomy here and say, I know you think that this is the right way to go because that's how you did it in your previous organization, but that's not going to work. And I know that this is going to be working more than what you think is going to work. But then you also have to be like, okay, like, this is a new problem. I have to listen to how the business usually does it, and how can I make sure that I fit my solution into their context, and not just act like I'm the go-to solution here. And another aspect is like, okay, do I have to just act for now, or do I have to act for long term? Because that's also the dilemma that I have on day-to-day basis. Like, okay, like, especially in startup, every day is a running fire show, and everywhere is burning. You need to put out the fire yesterday, and then it is a question of, okay, do I strike this with quick solution and just make sure that it's being done, or do I convince my stakeholders that taking the slow approach this time and being methodical about it, doing a deep analysis about it, is the right way to go? And finding the right side of the spectrum in all those different aspects of like timeline, the rule that I have to apply, the method that I have to use. It's a question that I think all L&D, no matter in which organization they are, and it's not a tool. It's not like there is a multiple choice question, and in the end you have like, here you go, this is your path. I wish there was something like that. But I think that's also why like the role of talking to each other, community, and all these things that we've mentioned at the beginning is very important. Because for me, sometimes after talking to Aki or other peers, that I'm like, oh yeah, right, like maybe that's not the way I should go. This is the way I should go. So that's my thought when it comes to like, because like when you mentor L&D professionals or just talk to other L&D professionals, they definitely ask for like hot tips, like how do I do this and this and this, and that's all. And that's usually, I will stare at them as like, I wish you could tell me. Because I don't answer either.
I mean, Aki, when do you feel impactful? And then we come to Lauren's comment. No, I mean, we just talked about the role, and we also said, okay, in the past, L&D professionals felt impactful when they designed this great training. People attended, signed up, came to the training that was already a success. And then, they said, I don't know, from 5 stars, I give it a 4.5. And in this moment, I, as the L&D professional, felt impactful. I mean, of course, it's not that black and white.
Still a good feeling.
Still a good feeling, yeah. I mean, but what else is there where you really think you feel impactful in your day-to-day work, and you think also this future L&D professional that we are mentally drawing here is impactful?
Yeah, it's a great question. For me personally, it is when I feel I did add value to the business in a tangible way. And I think seeing ratings is kind of value, because in the end, you see that people are happy with an initiative, but it doesn't tell you a lot about what it did for the business, right? There might be initiatives people love, absolutely adore. And in the end, it's not really something that adds a lot of value to the business. And so what makes me happy is when I feel, obviously I added value to people's experience in some sense, but then I also added something like a tangible result. And I mean, there's a lot of talk. I don't want to open this box right now about ROI of learning and so on. We could spend 3 podcasts on this. But I think there are ways to see tangible impact, and it's really important to look for those. And also, I can't say it's important to be happy about it, because you either are or not, but I'm really happy when I see, okay, this is something that wouldn't exist without us having done this. I think that's really important.
Can you give an example?
I mean, for example, if you help people adopt an AI tool that help them automate a lot of admin stuff that they needed to do, but they didn't necessarily want to do, that's amazing, isn't it? Like, and you can see that people have more time to spend on other things that are perhaps more creative parts on their job. That's examples that I've seen as an example. But I mean, I guess they're very different examples. And in the end, for me, it's about, I mean, change alone makes me happy, to be honest. Like when I feel I change a mindset, or because we talked about having this association between learning and development and training. And I don't want to bash training too much. I think it's more of this picture of training that I have, that training is classroom training, right? It is something you sit people down and they listen to someone who tells them what the right solution is to the problem, and then everybody does it, and then it works. And I think we can all agree that this is not the way the world works, especially in our times. Like we need
only in schools.
Exactly. And I even thought about, even machines, when we think about unsupervised learning, like even machines learn themselves right now, and they use their brains, and we enable them to use their reasoning. And we still so often go for the solution because it's very easy to set up, right? And it's easy to get someone who's an expert in the topic and then speaks about something. But I think also enabling change in thinking. For example, I had a situation in a senior leadership meeting where somebody said, where I presented about learning solutions or a focus for a given quarter that we would decide on. And someone from the leadership team said, so yeah, let's talk about training. And then somebody else from the leadership team corrected them and say, hey, training is not learning. Do you remember what Aki said? And I was like, yes, okay, made my day. And I guess I forgot what the person's name was that you mentioned before in Siemens. Yes.
Yeah.
I think it is, I love these principles so much because they are so pragmatic. And Lavinia and I, we also had a bunch of discussions around frameworks. And I have a love-hate relationships with frameworks because I think they give the illusion of having like a proper solution, but they are only mental models. And in reality, things are much more complex, and things that seem very simple in a framework might be very hard to achieve in reality. And that's why I'm a big fan of pragmatism in some way. And, you can give it all fancy names and say you need to pilot and iterate and, then all of these agile principles. In the end, it is about explore, be curious, like understand what are the problems to solve, think about a solution because we have expertise in thinking about this, talk to people who have expertise and experience, and then try it out with a small group of people and see what happens. And I've just run a pilot on AI learning in January. And I mean, I thought it was perfect and it wasn't, I think it's just that although I thought a lot of time about this because it was kind of one of the most crucial initiatives that I thought I would ever run, but I didn't get it right. And it's okay, and having this mindset of just applying and trying it out, I guess that's something that's really important for the future as well, especially when we think about, and I don't want to narrow this too much on AI, but especially if we have technology that we don't fully understand, and I think we can all say we don't fully understand it, not even people who created this technology fully understand it. We need to have this exploratory mindset and really being very pragmatic sometimes, and not speaking in very fancy terms, but rather thinking about how can I create impact tomorrow or perhaps in 6 months, but being really hands-on, I would say.
Wow,
hope that makes sense.
Appreciate this a lot, Aki. Thank you for sharing also this kind of learning from failure aspect, and I think that's part of it, right? Risk taking and trying out new things, going new paths. Of course, this can go also the wrong way, but I think I'm pretty sure you learned so much that others didn't, and this brings you to the next best solution. And I mean, by the way, also props to everyone here in the comments. Thank you so much for joining into the discussion. We read your comments and we smile and we integrate them here into the discussion. Also, when you have questions, feel free to put them here in the chat, and we're gonna build on these in a moment. And I mean, maybe it's because it's super hot here in this room, but maybe also because we are really we're running into this conversation, and it's great. I personally learned already so much, and but now to bring in a bit of structure, let's draw a little bit more this L&D professional of the future. what are the key competencies you see for an L&D professional in the future? What kind of mindset would you say towards learning and not training does such a person bring to the table? And yeah, how would you describe this L&D professional of the future?
Can we just throw in words?
Yes, please.
I think we can do that. So again, for me, it's a lot about courage. I know I already mentioned this, but I do think it's very important because it translates into so many things that both Dini and Aki have mentioned. This courage to experiment. You know that it's not going to be perfect right from the start, but just put it out there, and you will learn so much by putting it out there instead of keeping it with yourself and not showing it to everyone. So I think for me, courage is one thing. Then again, I think and I hope that in the future we will be more we will be somehow split into disciplines, because I feel at this moment there's a lot of pressure put on one L&D professional to know behavioral science, change management, neuroscience, a bit of marketing if they can, a bit of systems thinking if they can, to be consultants, to design learning experiences, to facilitate maybe. So I do hope we will have this ability of knowing where our strengths lie, and because we're so good at these separate things, our organizations will hire us either internally or externally to help them solve different challenges. So all of these skills, that technical knowledge maybe that I've just mentioned, I do still see in the future of L&D. And something else that just came to my mind, it's about the difference between adding versus looking into the system. And I'll explain in a moment what this means. So I feel like right now we are adding a lot. We are adding training, we are adding e-learning, we are adding all sorts of behavior change initiatives, facilitation sessions, and so on. And sometimes what we see is that they do not land well in the organization because there's something in the system that prevents that learning from being applied. And in my thinking, I do hope that at some point we will be able to, and we will be somehow allowed to, look into the system and see what is it that prevents learning from happening, either for individuals or for organizations. So this is how I translate this, learning architect mindset that has a bit of systems thinking in it, that I think, nice. Just sometimes it's so useful instead of just throwing things at the organization.
Yes, super cool, Lavinia. I like that learning architect. And I would also love to discuss at one point what are maybe things L&D shouldn't do any longer, right? To in order to do all this other stuff. But maybe Dini and Aki can take this up. Dini, what do you think? How would you describe this future L&D professional?
To add on to Lavinia's point about system thinking, for me, maybe because I wrote my bachelor thesis on that topic, but that's something that baffled me at the beginning as well, how L&D doesn't talk to other part of HR or other parts of business, or how very little of them can actually explain how the company is making money. Like, what are the revenue streams? What are the key clients? What are the key markets? And that's, for me, like, what signifies system thinking is knowing where you are operating and how things play into one system together, and how, like, okay, if you are going to create a certain program or certain learning journey, then of course you got to make sure that you understand how the recruiting pipelines work, like what kind of people actually go into your company, succession planning, all other parts of HR and all other parts of the business. And that's knowing that, like what kind of system are you operating in, and then also understanding, okay, this is the context that I'm going to deliver my solution for, and this is the kind of needs that I have to answer and pay attention to. So I can only add that if more L&D can think beyond their own bubble, and when I say bubble, we live in pretty L&D shiny bubble, and even for myself, and forget like what the other teams are doing, or pay attention to how the business is working at the moment. That, and then also Lavinia mentioned it, Aki as well, this agility, this ability to not being stuck into, okay, I just made a problem, or I just made a mistake, and then now it's going to be this. I struggled with that a lot when I was in corporate. I thought that I was already agile enough, and then I moved to startup, and I was like, well, I am not. Things just change from day 1 to day 2 very quickly. And that also means that, okay, you test things out, you ship it very early, you get feedback, even when you feel that you want to scream because you know that you could have made the baby even prettier than that, but you don't have the time. You just need to ship it early and get feedback from people, so that whatever product you're creating is not only shiny for you, but is also shiny for the organization actually answering the problem. And that this agility does not only require that you move fast and you just test things, it's also a lot of mental block. Because for me, I notice that whenever I get slow, it's usually because I have things in my head that like, oh, but I could have done this better, or like, oh, I don't want to admit that last quarter's project didn't actually work. And one concrete example, we moved much faster for a project, or like we adjusted much better because we admitted that it was a mistake, because we say that just plain to our senior leadership that, yeah, we ran that project, it was an experiment, we failed. And then that actually opens up a lot of feedback from them, because showing that vulnerability, and we failed that, and we think that we need to adjust a lot of things, also makes them, oh, this is a team, or this is an L&D that is open to get input from us and wants to get better, and also showcasing this courage that Lavinia mentioned, saying that this is where we are, we need your input, can you please give us more ideas of how to get better at this. So I think there will be a list of these are the skills that you need for to be the future of L&D. But what's helpful is to really just tune into what is your current context, what is the challenge that you have at the moment in your organization, and what is the 1-2 skills that you really need for that, because then it will be a very focused effort and a lot of trying and testing, instead of going through, I don't know, 9 courses of how, like, the 9 different aspects of L&D skills that you need to develop. If it's not part of your daily business, you'll usually forget it anyway. But if it's part of your current project, you apply it directly and you remember it strong. And I also feel like you don't need to be jack of all trades. If your L&D can be famous for 1 or 2 things, and 1 or 2 things would be revenue maker or anything else that's actually a big ticket for your organization, that's enough. That's enough of an impact for the L&D team.
Aki, what would you add?
Yeah, I'm already seeing the role description of the future. Like an incredible.
Yeah, we were working on it in the background.
Yeah, I'm scared. No, I think I guess what will stay perhaps, and I love what Dini said in terms of what did she say now? I lost the thought.
Dini, come back.
No, I don't remember. Anyways, I mean, I now remember basically having perhaps 1-2 really strong skills in this field of skills that might be really important in the future. I think that's something we should all take to heart. It's really important to not having to be good at everything that we discussed right now, but because I think it's a huge challenge. But I guess one thing that stays will be understanding how the brain learns, how we learn. And Lavinia said it before. I think it's so universal if you understand the principles of how learning works. And I assume what I see in the future is learning will be much more autonomous, that people will learn with AIs, that, you know, they will be able to role play with AI, they will be able to practice, to research, to acquire knowledge, all of these steps of the learning process. But we still need to help everyone to make sense of when and how to use it and in which form, right? And I think it is very helpful to think about principles of learning, like, I don't know, spaced repetition, or, you know, all of these basic things that we can use in every context, because obviously our brain doesn't change, at least not as quickly as technology does. And I always thought it's very helpful to learn about that, and then also trying to bring it into no context, like the time we're living in right now, but still using it in what we're setting up. But generally speaking, I mean, I mentioned a few points before as well on, I think, managing change and being part of change, and that means change for ourselves as well, to be honest, right? Like, if we need to rethink our roles, like, we will need a huge ability to change our approach. And I think if we can somehow detach a bit from what we think when we hear learning and development manager, I don't know, director, whatever it is in the end, and really have this open mind of thinking, what role can a person that knows how learning works play in an organization to add value? Then I think we are really one huge step forward, and this is a good place to start.
Yeah, and I think it's a good place also to start maybe with the Q&A, because I think one question really fits very well to what you just said. L&D needs to change. The people, you know, who do L&D need to change, but also maybe the company needs to change in order to make use of that, you know, potential that L&D can bring to the business. And I think that's a good question, which we can maybe also bring in here, which was asked. So what is your assumption why roles and approaches from L&D are still not shifting? So yeah, reframing the question maybe a little bit, what's holding L&D back, or what are the barriers, you know, in your way or in the typical way of an L&D profession? Yeah, it's Matthias Klein who asked the question. What would you say is it that holds L&D back from shifting?
Who wants to start?
Dini.
When I saw that question, it's like, I know that we, like Lavinia, Aki, and I, we talk about this a lot, especially whenever we went to conferences and then we just got back. I was like, well, that doesn't sound very encouraging. For me, one particular point that hinders me at the beginning was practical stories from people, like practical examples from people. And that's also what motivates me to be quite public with how I approach my work, because I want others to do the same. Because for me, especially moving from corporate to startup, I know that I cannot use best practices. Like my context is just different. It's much faster. The requirement from people are different. So I can't just follow frameworks and tools and the wisdom from 50 years of L&D, because my context is different. And at that time, you know, that was also the time where I discovered Lavinia, Aki, other L&D peers who are kind of in the same stage, also trying out new things, but not really sure where we are standing or whether we are doing the right thing. And we talk about it. We just gave honestly our experience, the mistakes that we did. We exchanged in this, you know, back then it was a small community, so regular exchanges is much easier. And then you learn, like I learned so much through just knowing how the behind the curtain of how L&D is being done. So not just the list of, you know, I think if you ask any L&D who has ever gone to any webinars or conferences, they will be able to mention to you the future of L&D, business first, technology, all this kind of thing. But no one can really give you, okay, how do you do those things then? Like when you say that social learning and informal learning is super important, how do you facilitate informal learning? What are the steps that I am able to do? And if you don't hear the approach and the practical experience of these people, then it will just always become an ideal. And it's like, yeah, like that speaker said that, they must be very successful in doing that. But actually, if you talk to them in depth and then also like ask the detailed question, you realize that you're probably not very far away from them, and you just need to tweak a few things and then you'll get there as well. So having that transparency, having that regular exchange, having that, you won't copy paste it anyway in your organization, but at least knowing the real steps that people take and learning from their steps so you don't have to repeat it, that helps me a lot in shifting my practices.
Aki, Lavinia, what would you say is holding L&D professionals back, or standing in their way?
I think what Dini said resonates a lot with me. And she mentioned a few points. And I think one thing is, where do we go? Like, even if I want to change, where do I start, right? What does this look like? And it's easier said than done. Be open to change. Just do it. Great, I'm on it. And what do I do now? Right. So I think that's just one element of it. Then I'm coming back to what Lavinia framed as courage. And I still remember we had a call on L&D skills of the future a while ago, and I described stuff, and Lavinia said, that's courage. So I guess that resonates a lot with me. I think it's just, it's scary. Change is scary. And I'm seeing this so much at the moment when we implement new technology, when our roles change, like it is simply scary, and we have to embrace it, and we have to be willing to lean into that scariness and find ways to get comfortable with it. And then I would say, even if we craft this role, and I agree with Lavinia, I think there will be different kind of roles probably, because what we are describing right now, it's hard to imagine that one person on this planet can do all of this. Then the question is, how do I get there? If it's kind of unknown territory, who are the people supporting me in getting there? And I guess the answer is not many. So perhaps we can use knowledge from different disciplines, which I think has always been a good idea in L&D, not to only look into the traditional learning literature, but also thinking about psychology, all of these different elements that we have there. And then be pioneers and just go step by step and try stuff out. And I'm getting back to my pragmatic approach, and I think that's just something we just have to do. And with every step, we'll gain confidence that we can get there. But yeah, I don't think there will be a book that can guide us in the end, or this perfect skills matrix that will tell us learn this skill and then that skill. I think it will be a lot of pioneering.
Maybe before we come maybe also to you, Lavinia, for me that sounds maybe a little bit too much like the walk in the park, right? You just have to be a bit courageous. You just, you have to embrace change, and then, this will work out, right? And if I look to many L&D professionals, I know they will be like, what the heck, right? I have so many tasks on my, desk, and then there is this, leader asking that from me, and then there is the group, right? So
I never said I don't cry from time to time. So.
That's good to hear, Aki. Thank you. No, the question is that I want to point to is how do you actually make time to think? How do you make time to be logical? How do you make time to be curious? Because, this takes time, right? It's not, the routine. It's not, this, okay, fast forward delivery performance mode. It's more a learning zone, right? That you need to be in there and analytical. And how did you make time for that? How did you manage your other stakeholders? What did you say no to?
I mean, just one thought that comes to mind is I think this is also responsibility of organizations and leadership teams to create this environment where people are willing to be courageous. And there's a lot around psychological safety in these times. And I think this topic is so much more important than ever before. And I feel like 10 years back, there was this huge wave of psychological safety in leadership. And, you know, like you needed for people to learn properly and learn from the mistakes. And I feel we'll need triple of that right now, and just for all of us, honestly, to do this. And yeah, I'm super curious to see. But I think it's very much on the environment. And then, because I mean, the things that work for me also work because I'm in an environment, and Lavinia has highlighted this as well when I was speaking about the initiatives that I do, where people are very much have this mindset, and they are very open to this idea that things might go wrong, and that most probably things will go wrong, and we learn fast enough from them to do differently the next time. But I would say one answer to this question is, let's all work to create organizations where people are willing to try something out, and even if they fail, as long as they learn from them, give them another chance and foster this in some way.
Lavinia, Dini, what would you say? What did you stop doing? Or Lavinia, what would you recommend L&D stop doing actually to make time for everything that we just discussed, right?
I think it's a really, really hard question. I actually had, just to go back to, I think, Matthias's question, because I feel we put a lot on L&Ds, you know, why are we not changing because of us? But the reality, and to Aki's point, I think there is component of society and of how education is being done and what we have thought about learning and how organizations are shaped and how they incentivize learning. So I think there are elements in the system where we are that work against us. So, but as time goes by, I see things changing, maybe in small pockets of the world, but things are changing. And I like to say, you know, what happened in marketing, for example, because it's a separate discipline, but it's very similar to what I see happening in our field, which is things worked very well for a very long time, and then startups came. And that's where growth marketing appeared with a completely new set of mindsets, of tools, and so on. It was a long time before the corporate world started adopting those same frameworks. And I feel it's very similar in L&D, because in small startups, just like Dini said, and like Aki is doing, you operate with a completely different set of resources. So you need to be more efficient, you need to show your ROI quicker, and so on. So you're molded differently as an L&D professional. And right now, I feel like we're just there with more corporate L&Ds starting to see the mindset of startup L&Ds as well. And what would I do, just to go back to your first question, as hard as that sounds, I would say no. I would ask questions, not just say no because I want to say no, but ask enough questions to sometimes make my stakeholders realize that it's not a problem that I would be able to solve. Not an easy answer.
That's super interesting. No, but that's really interesting. So you say, you know, by asking more and more questions, helping your counterpart to realize that, just to do another learning training or whatever isn't maybe the solution, right? And or redirect them maybe to a completely other kind of solution. And that's, I think, helpful. We're coming to the end. Unfortunately, we're coming to the end of the session, because I think I could do this for hours. I felt like we just got it started. And I will come back to you guys for one last question, and I give it already to you so that you have some time to think about it while I just share some outlooks here. The question is, just think about you being that person, that receptionist, you know, calling a room of an L&D professional very early in the morning. Hey guys, this is your wake-up call for L&D. What would you say? What's the one message you would give to this L&D professional in terms of, hey, wake up?
I guess for me, the question is something around when was the last time you did something for the first time? Just because
Cool.
I feel we're on a cycle, and doing new things might help, I guess.
Cool. Dini.
I can go next. I think my internet is breaking down.
But we can still
But
hear you.
what I would good. What I would say is you won't be able to do everything.
No.
Everything at once.
Dini, we heard you. You were like, you can do everything, and then it was frozen. But that's maybe the message. Yeah, that's maybe to the point. Yeah, so prioritize, say no. Great. Aki.
I guess I would say something around what is one little step that you could do today that will lead you towards a future version of L&D that you would like to see.
Yeah, maybe I would go to bed back then. No, just kidding. No,
breakfast is ready as well.
No, it's all about changing and doing this by your own and no. Guys, thank you so much. For me, this was super insightful. I learned in those last 60 minutes so much. Yeah, you can't do everything. The mic drop is definitely, I think, the summary of this call, of this Good Morning L&D's session. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Dini. Thank you, Lavinia. Thank you, Aki, for making the time and sharing all your learnings. It was really fun and great to have you. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.